Good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us for this month's town hall. I want to thank the Ukrainian American Community Center for hosting us. It's always a pleasure when we are able to come back and be home with our community and be able to provide updates and answer your questions. As many of you know, I've always believed in co-governance, so hearing from you and others in the district guides the work that we do in Congress and here at home. I want to start out also by thanking my colleagues in local and state government who are here with us tonight. We have Senator Doran Clark, Representative Sidney Jordan. It is for birthday, so can you guys do it?
Happy birthday!
We also have Minneapolis City Council member Michael Wainfield and Minneapolis City Council member Robin Wonsley. For all the years I've known you, you think I'd get that right. Before I dive into my updates, as usual, I want to invite these leaders to share a bit about the work that they are doing here in our community. So we'll start with City Council member Wainfield.
Thank you, Representative. And as is the custom here in Northeast, we like to grow flowers and give them away as gifts. I just wanted to say hello briefly. It's such an honor to be asked to speak and to be in this room because 37 years ago I was married and my reception was in this hall. So every time I'm in here I just have great feelings with the love I have for my wife and my family. It's still so wonderful. But I appreciate the Congresswoman taking her act, so to speak, to the streets, to go out front and meet with people. I'm a big believer in that. And the one thing I wanted to do tonight, because I have to run, I go another appointment, but I want to congratulate you that you did not get your committee assignments taken away from you. Thank God there were 4 Republicans that saw the light that you should not be punished for representing your constituents. And that is the basic of democracy, that you vote the way your constituents feel, and you should not be punished for that. So that gives me hope that we're going to work through all this by listening to each other, loving each other, and doing the right thing, as in the case of not taking away the committee assignments from Ilhan. So thank you very much for your time. And again, I apologize, but I'm double booked, actually triple booked tonight. They're going to be redoing Marshall Street. That's my last assignment. But I'm going to talk to some realtors. And for anybody here from the Ukrainian Hall, I want to let you know I got the parking put in on Hennepin from the county. So Marshall Street will have parking in this next redo. That was a big thing for them to have. So another good sign that we're all listening to each other. Thank you.
Thank you, next, we are going to hear from Senator Doran Clark.
It's always difficult to follow the native son because I don't have quite the ties as he has of being married in this room. But I did have an excellent beer in that parking lot with the Ukrainian event. This, it is special that we are in this hall. Our friends and neighbors in Ukraine are standing up to aggressors, and that is something that they see it day after day, and they are standing. We stand with them, whether we're standing in this hall or standing elsewhere with them as well. And it's part of what we did in the legislature this year. We stood up. We stood up and said the great things that the legislature did in 23 and 24, including free meals for kids in schools. So thank you, Representative George. She was the champion of that. We kept paid leave. We kept a lot of the wonderful things that occurred in 23 and 24, and we balanced the budget. Now, we had to figure out ways to work across the aisle. and we had to be clear where we had our backbone, and we're not going to bend. And that's part of what we continue to do, and we continue to need your help to make sure it happens. That we are talking about preventing gun violence. It's not Sydney and Representative Jordan and I alone at the Capitol. It's you calling up your neighbors, your friends, who may live in Blaine, or may live in Stillwater, or may live in Maple Grove, who have a Republican senator who might be hopefully a little influenced if you're willing to give them a call. So we know how Sydney and I are going to vote when it comes time to ban AR-15s, when it comes time to ban high-capacity magazines, but we need to find a couple of other votes. So that's part of the update I give you, is that we need your help to do all this. And we need your help in making sure that you are standing up and you are standing with us, and I'm standing with you when we speak loudly against the chaos that's coming from Washington. When we speak loudly to say, you can't do that to our neighbors. And that's how, well, when you've got a government that's acting a bit authoritarian, it's paper tiger. They can be stopped, they can be pushed back upon, and it happens when we, the people, stand up and speak loudly. So the update I give you is we're working hard for you in St. Paul. You've sent us to do difficult work, and we're doing that, and it takes all of us to make sure that we are pulling together to ensure that our values here in Senate District 60 remain true and fulfill the promise that is Minnesota. So I do officially say welcome to Senate District 60. We are filled with wonderful things, and I'm glad that you're here, and thank you to Representative Omar for bringing us together tonight to have this good conversation.
Thank you so much, Senator Clark. Now we will hear from State Representative Sydney Jordan.
Hi everyone, and welcome to 60A, which is my district. I am Sydney Jordan, and it is my honor to represent my fellow Northeasters and Southeast Como residents in the Minnesota House of Representatives. I use she, her pronouns, and I live just over on the other side of Central Avenue. And it's always, the Ukrainian Center is one of my favorite places in this district. I've been able to partner with our Ukrainian Center over the years to divest our state pensions and funds from Russia and Belarus, and also to work with the Ukrainian Center on capital upgrades for this very building to make sure that we have a roof and a stage so that we can support all of the great cultural and immigration activities that happen right here. So thank you to the Ukrainian Center for supporting. Senator Clark really pushed on a lot of the things that happened this year in the legislature. This year, the Minnesota House was and remains tied. So that means that every piece of legislation that comes out of the Minnesota House has to have bipartisan support. And so that meant that we didn't have the same progress that we saw over the last 2 years. It also meant that we were able to push back on most of the Republicans' very bad ideas. What that means, though, is that we are currently tied when it comes to meaningful action on gun control. Today, every single member of my caucus, the DFL caucus, has said that we will gladly come into special session. We want a special session, and we want to vote on a ban on assault weapons and large capacity magazines. Every single Republican member of the House, despite working, I have tried negotiating on things like education spending, every single member of the Republican House has said that they will not come back and that they will not vote for a ban on high-capacity magazines and weapons of war. Yeah, it's enraging, it's wrong, especially as we see children in our streets being shot by these guns. We see children in mass being shot by these guns. And we know that even here in Northeast Minneapolis, we have had threats called into our schools where children are just trying to learn and play and grow on the playground. And so this is wrong. As Senator Clark said, if you have friends in those suburbs that he mentioned to sway Republicans, we need help in the Minnesota House. If you have people in the western Minnetonka suburbs or family, Representative Andrew Myers needs to hear from constituents. Representative Nadeau in northern Hennepin County needs to hear from constituents, and Representative Engen in White Bear Lake needs to hear from constituents exactly what these weapons and what these bullets do to children and do to people. So we need your help. Please contact anyone you know in those areas. I heard from hundreds of you. I am trying to respond to all of you. It is taking me some time, but it is great to hear this community stand so firmly against violence. So thank you, and you are powerful. We will continue to work and advocate for a special session or what else we can do to keep our community safe. And if there isn't a special session, we have a regular session coming up, and it will certainly be part of any discussions we have this next year at the legislature. That being said, we still are working on infrastructure projects. We're still working on making sure our schools have funding. We're still working on making sure that we can have healthcare that all of us can afford, and we're still making sure that we can stand up to tax cuts for billionaires at the expense of all of us. So the work continues, and I know your emails and calls and support will continue as well. So thank you for that. That is how we make change. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Representative Omar. And like Councilmember Rainville, I also have to run, but it's always an honor to be here in the Ukrainian Center with all of you. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Representative Jordan, and I hope you enjoy your stay. Now I would like to welcome Hennepin County Board Chair Irene Fernando.
Give it up for Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. I am Commissioner Irene Fernando, who you can call me Commish. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm really, really lucky to get to be the youngest woman to ever serve on the Hennepin County Board, the first Filipino American elected in the state of Minnesota, and the first board chair of color in Hennepin's 173-year history. County government is a really important infrastructural aspect to our social services. There are 87 counties in Minnesota. Hennepin has 1.3 million people, and we represent 22% of the state's population. Within Hennepin County, there are 45 cities. Of course, Minneapolis is the largest. And in District 2 are residents, so perhaps you have neighbors or family members who are District 2 residents but that don't live in Minneapolis. I represent Plymouth, Medicine Lake, Golden Valley, the northern third of Minneapolis, and St. Anthony Village, and I call the North Side home. Counties are an important aspect of social services, and as a product of matriarchal leadership and a really significant matriarchy in Filipino culture, I can attest to the role of counties as caregivers. We are the primary government mandated to care for the vulnerable. That doesn't mean we should be the only ones caring for the vulnerable and for our residents from this perspective, but we have a particular charge, especially in the state of Minnesota, because there are a handful of what we call county-administered states. These are states where counties are administering social services. I'm spending a little bit more time here because of the reallocation of service funding to the ultra rich. Not only is impacting residents, it will be an aspect where we have to come together. And I want to be upfront about what that means for us and how that might show up as it is budget and it is property tax kind of season. I also like to share, maybe like is strong, but counties are also, we do chores. We do a lot of the stuff that perhaps cities of different sizes may not want to be able to take on. Hence why we're a lot of times overlooked. We have a regional role in this community, in our county, and in the state because of our size. And that is a responsibility that I know I take proudly, and I know each of you do too. We are meant to be considerate. We are meant to be methodical with our investments. It is favorable to look at data, consider the outcomes that are necessary or that we desire for residents, outline specific programs, test them, and then continue to invest in them when they work. Discontinue them if they might not. This is the type of method that I hope you observe from me individually, and that I hope you can, that I promise that you should be able to expect from the county as a whole. So this doesn't mean that everything is always perfect and that every single request is accepted, but I want to be very, very, very clear. Let's take something like SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. The cost shift from SNAP, feeding kids, feeding people who need to be fed, who need support, that cost shift alone is one full levy point for the 2026 budget. Let's take Medicaid. Medicaid is about $300 to $400 million of our human services budget, and $800 to $900 million for our hospital. Just let that settle in. $1 billion to $1.2 billion just off of that Medicaid line item for people for preventative care. Nearly half of children, many of those who have disabilities, and for those who are desiring to live a healthy life with their families and with their communities. That is not a hole we can tax our way out of. So I hope you will come to rely upon the county's leadership in this moment. We are in a time where the economy isn't likely to be great, and when the economy isn't as great, county services are needed even more. We are not going to turn our back on residents. We will not shy away from programs that have been proven by data to work. We have functionally ended veterans' homelessness, proving that we can end homelessness priority population response. We have funded hundreds of millions of dollars into the full housing continuum from residents who need a temporary shelter all the way up to home ownership. Because we know it is only through economic stability that people and families can live with a sense of freedom, and most importantly, that young people and our youngest, littlest residents can live up to the vibrant potential that we know each of them have in their hearts and minds. The last time, you're on. Thank you. I'm a youth worker, so can't help it. The last thing I wanted to mention, I guess 1.5 things, is our flagship hospital, Hennepin Healthcare System, Inc., HCMC. I know there's been a lot of news about HHS over the last few years, specifically this year. And so what I will share with you is this. Clearly, healthcare is in need of improvement in order to meet the mission that residents expect. Hospitals all over the country are closing. Hospitals are closing clinics, they're laying off people, and Hennepin Healthcare System, or HCMC, is the very last public safety net hospital in the state of Minnesota, and the last public safety net hospital in the Upper Midwest. And so the votes that you read about in the news, it was because, like many hospitals and health systems, we learned from hospital leadership at risk of closure, at risk of disrupted services, at risk of decreasing the services available. Well, we know that if somebody's coming to our emergency room without the ability to pay, they need to be able to be seen. And so Hennepin County Board, we have voted to regain oversight to guarantee that it does not close this year. So I want to be very, very clear. HHS is staying open because health is what all of us in. Now my very last thing. I said 1.5 things technically. This is my half thing, I guess. I am very aware and sensitive to the pressures that your households are feeling by way of costs, by way of hope, and I know that Hennepin County does send the bill for all of our property tax assessments. So I want to acknowledge that you will see something in the mail, and that combines all of the property tax assessments. Hennepin County has been committed to not laying anybody off, and we still have not. We have over almost 10,000 workers at Hennepin County and over 7,000 at the hospital. And we are committed to not discontinuing services. Now that is going to take immense innovation, creativity, and yes, legislative advocacy. It is my strong, strong belief that we must establish via the state, either county by county or the whole state, dedicated revenue for healthcare. I cannot even fathom, even though my first year in office was this administration, that Medicaid, a 50-plus year bipartisan it's not even an agreement. It's a through line through our entire lives, from behavioral health to mental health to physical health to food, for everything in between. If that is possible to be removed, then we must ensure that we can raise the funds and care for our local communities ourselves. So with immense love and appreciation for the roles you play in communities, and with a little bit of sadness for our state of cortisol in the atmosphere, I'm really heartened to feel your engagement. Please know, we know that many of you are not standing for this. You know, you do not accept these conditions, and it is through that energy that each of us are able to come together and ensure that shared humanity prevails. Thank you.
Thank you, Kanish. And lastly, we will have City Councilwoman Waisley speak.
Good night, well, yeah, good evening, everyone. It's a long day. I'm Councilmember Robin Wansley, and I represent Ward 2 of the Minneapolis City Council, which also includes the university area. And I just want to thank you, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, for allowing me to join you all tonight to give some updates around work that's happening from your local legislative body in response to a lot of the things that many of my colleagues have named. Council has really been honing in on really putting in practice our value statement as a city that says we are welcoming and that we are fostering a city that's equitable and inclusive to all. And while we're absolutely understanding that inequities are further intensifying as a result of the action taken up by this federal administration that, again, many of my colleagues spoke to, we also have to be responsive to the reality that many of these inequities existed prior to the federal administration taking place. And being responsive to both of those dynamics, some of the policy work that we have advanced even just in the recent weeks or recent months that I think is important to highlight during our time tonight is first starting with the Civil Rights Ordinance. The council passed an updated and strengthened version of the Civil Rights Ordinance to add additional protected classes to make sure that some of our most vulnerable communities, again, that are facing heightened scrutiny under this administration, such as people with records that's being weaponized against them, to, again, protecting existing protected class status like those from various national origins, making sure we're devoting more resources to those communities to make sure that they're not being discriminated against. So that is a policy that we unanimously brought forward this spring. Another one, as we're still also talking about this conversation of how we're being fiscally responsible and cognitive of how we're stewarding you all's taxpayer dollars. A couple of things that we have taken up related to, for one piece is public safety. So is anyone in the room familiar with something called off-duty? Raise your hands.
Yeah.
All right. So off-duty is a program, so to say, that the city of Minneapolis is legally mandated to have. That largely came by the police union. And it means that we have to allow officers to carry out side security gigs where they collect private money, but using city-owned property. So sometimes you might drive past a bar, or you might drive past a construction site and you'll see an MPD car there and thinking they're on duty. They're actually doing a private security gig using those resources. And we did a study after 3 years of asking for it and learned that you all were subsidizing, through, again, the provision of cars, uniforms, again, all of which is helping support private pay being collected. You all were subsidizing that program at $1.4 million a year and not receiving a public gain from it. So my office worked with my colleagues to get a bill across the finish line just a couple weeks ago that will allow us to collect the fees on that, so that that burden or that subsidy is no longer coming at the expense of taxpayers. It will be recouped through those who are soliciting those services, so private and external companies. Another thing, because we understand federally, there is a hostile response to the realities of climate change. And I mean, we see it in our everyday. We see it today. It should not be 80 degrees on October 2nd. That's what, like, my staff members like, I went for a run by the lake with just a shirt and some shorts on. I was like, this is scary. These are the end times. And while the administration is not acknowledging that and actually doubling down on programs that expedite the destruction of our ecosystem, that means there's an onus amongst your local governments as well as your state governments to make or implement serious approaches to that. And also not only approaches, but also how we're supporting our residents and either having their homes be environmentally retrofitted to be more environmentally friendly, or to get more resources to communities that have historically been polluted or have faced environmental racism. I'm thinking of like our East Phillips communities who are advocating for our East Phillips urban farm. And right now we would ask for your support in urging specifically the mayor. I think the city council is on board with modifying the agreement, purchase agreement, so that that community can actually purchase that building and actually set a mandate that acknowledges how community development can be climate resiliency. But and to accompany that, similar to this idea of fees, passing the buck to those who are responsible or hold a fair share of responsibility. We know industrial polluters do a really big job of emitting a lot of the pollutants that we breathe in, the air or the pollution that's caused in our community. And part of the way we've responded to that is the council in my office worked on 3 years of getting this across the finish line, has implemented carbon fees. So this is going to be fees allocated to polluters, which includes the county. The work incinerator. These that will allow us to actually do climate mitigation work and fund that, specifically to reduce carbon. And carbon emissions are particularly some of the most dangerous pollutants that's driving the climate crisis. So we're excited about being responsive to that. On the housing front, because we are a majority renter city, and also one of the realities that we're experiencing is just an ongoing housing crisis and seeing many residents fall into displacement. Right now we're working on a bill called Stop Slumlords, and it's called Slumlord Tier Oversight and Protection Ordinance. There's about 160 landlords across the city. They are responsible for about 2,000 units. So tens of thousands of residents or renters living in these units. And these 160 landlords are not meeting the city's existing housing code and are providing substandard housing to those residents. And we're talking about, it takes a lot to become that particular tier of a landlord. And that means you're experiencing pest control. Actually, we had a public hearing yesterday where renters themselves talked about having cracks in their ceilings and having infestations of roaches and going to sleep and having mice crawl over their children and things of that nature. There are people living in our city under those deplorable conditions. So this policy was foster more transparency. It will require those particular licenses to come forward for review and for our city staff to prepare a plan on how to get those landlords in compliance with our existing housing code and ultimately remedying those deplorable conditions that renters are living under, because no one should have to live like that. And then another piece that I will also advocate, again, is we're walking into budget season. I'm more than happy to share with Congresswoman Omar the budget schedule, just a quick timeline of things. We will have a public hearing on October 6th, the next one from 1:30 to 4 p.m., but you can always send in public comments. And I would say it's deeply important that you all come and participate, again, around how are we stewarding you all's resources in a way that's responsive to the everyday realities of working class communities, and also responsive to the dynamic that we're experiencing as a result of our current federal administration. And while I know me and Congresswoman Omar have completely different jobs, what we have seen with the federal administration is Congress and our legislative elected leaders moving resources to the places that they need to be positioned. And we're seeing the executive refuse to enact or completely undermine those resources. I want to name, we're experiencing some similar dynamics here on the local level. We have critical programs that supplement the losses that we're experiencing at the federal level, targeting homelessness, for instance, called the Emergency Housing Voucher Program that we actually are working in partnership with Hennepin County on. That is being proposed for elimination, and that would guarantee 100 vouchers to people experiencing chronic homelessness in our city, and it's on track to put our city in a reduction of up to 20% of our homeless population. That is on the chopping block. To the elimination of civilian investigators that will help solve crime in our communities. Those are up on the chopping block. And these are resources that council appropriated but are not being implemented by our own chief executive. So I would encourage you all to come to City Hall, either submit written comments and take a look at our budget book on October 6th. But yeah, I know as County Commissioner Irene Fernando highlighted, we're a resilient city. We're actually a city that's leading the country right now in terms of how to not retreat in fear, to stand firm on our progressive values and be a beacon of light on how to make sure we're protecting all of our communities and advancing progressive legislation and inviting the lawsuits and inviting the challenges from a government that does not care about poor people, that does not care about working class communities. And that's largely because of residents like you. You all called us to do exactly that, to stand up for the ordinary person and to stand firm on our progressive values, because this is not the moment to retreat in fear and be complicit or complacent. So with that, I'll leave those updates. Thank you all so much for letting me join you.
Thank you so much, Councilwoman Mosley. I really appreciate those updates. It's always fun when I have the county, city, and state folks come and give updates. You get people like Mike who just say hello and leave. And then you get, the ones who want to go through every detail, which is lovely. But I do appreciate the fact that I have just incredibly effective partners on local, state, and county level to work with. As many of you know, our government, once again, is shut down, but this time with a Republican-controlled House, Senate, and administration. This shutdown and the devastating consequences that come with it are entirely on them. Democrats have been very clear that we need a plan to not only keep the government open, but to make sure that we are addressing the healthcare crisis. Trump and congressional Republicans have been unwilling to negotiate with us in good faith. We have seen them block us yesterday from bringing a common sense legislation to the floor. We believe that if we do not take action, we are going to see healthcare premiums skyrocket to 75% next year for over 20 million Americans, with over 4 million Americans losing their healthcare coverage altogether. It is unfortunate, I believe, that Republicans have chosen to let the government shut down rather than bringing forward a plan that would make healthcare affordable for their constituents and ours as well. As a result, as many as 750,000 federal workers are facing furlough. Some are being threatened to lose their job. And others, like air traffic controllers and food inspectors, are expected to work without pay. Food assistance programs like WIC are set to run out of funds within days, and countless services that the American people rely on will either be stopped or seriously delayed. And instead of coming up with a real solution to reopen the government, Trump is using this disaster to target civil servants even more. He's announced a plan to use the shutdown to permanently eliminate federal workers and rather than place them on unpaid leave. It is going to take a real pressure from the American people to make sure that we get Republicans back on the negotiating table. I know I've reported on the big ugly bill before that was passed in July. We've talked about how it was going to be a disaster for the American people. We know that special interests and their billionaire donors got, $4.5 trillion in tax cuts, while 17 million Americans are set to lose their health care coverage. That includes 173,000 Minnesotans. We know that this bill could cost 50,000 Americans to die each year because Republicans shamefully voted to kick millions off Medicaid and failed to extend the premium tax credits. It will also increase healthcare costs and endanger access to care for so many Americans. We know that rural hospitals will be forced to shut down. We know that nursing homes and community health centers will greatly be impacted. It is the biggest wealth transfer from the poorest of Americans to the richest of Americans. I can't tell you how long this shutdown is going to last, but what I can tell you is that we need to make sure that we are contacting our two senators, asking them to hold strong until the healthcare cuts are restored. And as many of my colleagues have requested, if you know folks in other states, please reach out to them and ask them to make phone calls to their senators. Our office serves as a liaison to all of the federal agencies. So you can reach out to us if you need a passport to be renewed, if you need a visa, reconnection with family members. So far this year, our staff has helped 841 constituents with issues like Social Security, immigration taxes, and healthcare. We've been able to return $4.8 million to our constituents, businesses, and organizations. We might not be able to fix every case, but we will definitely try our best because that's what we owe to you. And with that, I will take questions. Oh, you have mine? Okay. You don't have to line up. I will call on you if you raise your hand. And I will just say, yeah, don't touch the mic.
Thank you. Minnesota is a leader nationwide for providing mental health services within public schools, like where I work at Fridley Middle School through the organization Change Inc. This kind of critically important healthcare service is now in the sights of the country's health secretary and education secretary, who recently published an opinion piece in a national newspaper that they want schools to do away with mental health screenings and therapy. Are there measures, perhaps even proactive ones, that could be taken in the federal legislature if the Trump administration and/or Congress were to introduce initiatives that eliminate funding and protections for school-based mental health?
I'm not aware of there being an effort at the moment, but I would say, so many of us have fought to make sure those resources were in our schools because we know how important and vital they are. So I can tell you that there would be a huge pushback if they did try to take those resources away.
This might be a very naive question, but very shortly after President Trump put his hand on the Bible and swore to defend the Constitution, within 3 or 4 hours after he was defying what was written law in this country. How can he have any legitimacy at all? And how is he still in the position that he's in?
The way I think someone like Trump at the moment is getting away with what he's getting away with is the fact that Congress, both in the House and in the Senate, has leadership that has bent the knee, has cowardly followed his leadership, has refused to be the check in that balance of power. And it is going to take control switching over for there to be any sort of real accountability. I've always said I don't think he understands or has reverence for the Constitution. I don't think he cares about the checks and balances that exist in this country and should be. I mean, every day I ask myself, how is he still there? And I know you do. Yesterday when he was giving his speech to the generals, all I kept thinking about was we would laugh if another president was speaking in that manner. And I just feel really sad as an American that this is now our president that people are laughing at.
I care deeply about climate change, and there's many possible reasons: extreme weather, electricity prices. Councilwoman Wansley made me feel a little bit better at the local level that things are happening, but it's obviously not looking great at the federal level. And I just wonder if you see any areas for hope there.
I don't. They're getting worse. They are repealing everything that we did in the Inflation Reduction Act. They are threatening states like Minnesota to withhold the dollars that we are supposed to get in addressing the climate crisis or for energy, for that matter. No, I believe things will probably get much worse before they get better. I see you guys. Just trying to balance the room.
How you doing, Representative Omar? Good to see you again. Andrew Hagan. I'm here for two purposes: as a citizen, constituent of CD5, and as a letter carrier here in Minneapolis. I want to share a message to some of your constituents here and also bring up some issues. Representative Omar has been a huge advocate for letter carriers in DC. Doesn't always get put in the news, but she serves in a vital role currently. She's the ranking member of the subcommittee for workforce protections. And as we've talked about a couple times here, climate change is real. The number one killer of the letter carrier job is heat illness. 3 times this summer, to my knowledge, across the country, we've had carriers die on the route because of heat illness. Here in Minneapolis, we've had a handful of carriers go home early because of heat illness. And I urge the state and local leaders here as well, if the federal government's not going to act collectively to address the climate change, more importantly, protections for workers in heat and climate, to take action and get that on the books. Representative Omar has done a great job taking up the fight on OSHA, putting some teeth in that agency, so that way us carriers and other federal agencies that are working out in the environment can go after management and the agencies that refuse to give us water, breaks in the shade, and so on and so forth. So that's one thing. So round of applause for that. The other issue I want to bring up is OPM, Office of Personnel Management. We are now completing the first year of the new health benefit program. We used to be under the Federal Employee Health Benefit Program. The Postal Reform Act of 2022 took the letter carriers and the postal employees off that program and put us into the Postal Service Health Benefit Program. My national union has made a statement, and it's a concerning statement, that with the hiring freeze, now the current government shutdown, with open enrollment coming in a short time, claims and questions and concerns through OPM will not be addressed because no one will be there to answer the phones. Meaning, if you have a life-changing event or whatnot, your claim will not get processed and you will be stuck on your current health benefit plan, even if it's not the one for you. So, thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, okay, yeah, okay. Thank you.
Don't touch the mic.
Hi, I moved here in May from the state of Nebraska, and I'm so happy to be here. I'm happy to be in a community that acts like a community, and I'm happy to hear from the county commissioner that everybody in this room is dedicated to keeping the services that I rely on going. And I'm happy to be represented by someone who behaves with integrity. And integrity, I'm sorry, I didn't expect it to become like this, but integrity is something that is lacking in our country right now. And I guess my question is that, are we, now that we have the Arizona representative, Alavita Grijalva, I don't know if I'm saying her name.
You are.
Okay. Once they stop stalling on swearing her in, can we get that vote to bring the Epstein files out into the light? And what can we do? What can we do to hold these people who have no integrity accountable? These people who are protecting predators, and how can we bring these predators to account and hold the people who are protecting them accountable? And what's your strategy for that?
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here, and as somebody who also moved to Minnesota, I can tell you we are very welcoming, and we do act like we are neighbors and love each other, which is a really beautiful thing. Adelita is supposed to be the last signature that will bring the vote to the floor, which is why we are not in session. The Pedophile Protection Party is serious about their pedophile protection. They literally canceled votes just so she wouldn't get sworn in and we wouldn't have to vote on releasing the Epstein files. In the oversight committee, one of the subcommittees that is led by Summer Lee of Pittsburgh, she was able to get, I see some love for Summer, that's great. She was able to get a vote through in her subcommittee because the Republicans didn't think there was much happening, so they were not there, all of them were not there. And so she was able to basically get this vote that required the FBI to send the files to the committee. Now, the FBI Director Patel is still walking it, right? So they are getting, they're supposed to get all of the records in one time. So they're getting, small patches of it. And what they're getting is also strongly redacted. So it's hard to fully understand what's in the documents. We know that one that just recently came through had the likes of Elon Musk and others, which is kind of funny because Elon was making fun of Trump for being in the files. So he also apparently is in the files. And so we will continue to make the case. To me, I think a lot of people, they say, why are Democrats all of a sudden, do they care? And it's because you are running scared. And there has to be something there, right? You can't run on releasing the files. And then once you get in office, say it's a hoax, there's nothing there. When we're talking about a known pedophile who, interestingly, died during the Trump administration. And so there's a lot there, and we'll chase it for as long as we can.
Congresswoman Omar, thanks for being here. It's the second town hall. I've recently become a resident of your district, and I'm very proud to have you as my representative.
We're just getting so many people moving here. This is excellent.
Your sense of moral clarity and integrity, echoing the gentleman from Nebraska over there, it's refreshing. So, a question I have here. So, Director Russell Vogt, who is the director of the Office of Management and Budget, or OMB, has issued memos directing agencies to prepare reduction in force plans and publicly signaled its plans for mass firings during a shutdown. And Project 2025, of which Vogt was a key architect of, explicitly proposes converting merit civil service jobs into political appointments. Given those documented threats, what immediate, specific statutory or procedural steps are you and House Democrats pursuing to protect civil service neutrality, prevent mass firings, and ensure continuity of essential services? And what concrete short-term steps do you want your constituents, like myself, to take this week to support those efforts?
What concrete things are we doing in Congress? One thing that we are looking at, obviously, is helping support litigation through the courts. We know that many folks got their jobs reinstated through litigation when Doge was kind of doing what the director wants to do now. We know that our oversight committee is going to hold him accountable. They're working on trying to figure out how to schedule a hearing to fully understand what these memos are about. And we certainly have introduced 2 pieces of legislation to make sure that we are guaranteeing that path pay and that unjust firings will not take place. The possibility of those moving when we're in the minority are limited. And so what people can do is to try to make sure that Republicans feel the pressure of what this administration is doing and what they are allowing this administration to do.
Thank you for your service. I'm going to ask a question about the genocide in Gaza. And my question does not at all dismiss or lessen my concerns about the militarization of our cities, immigrants being grabbed out of their homes, at work, and the many, many, many other issues I'm sure many of us in this room consider priorities. But I'm here in Minnesota. I too am new to Minnesota. Having moved here from Jane Braskill's district. And so my tax dollars, our federal tax dollars, are paying for the genocide in Gaza. Additionally, our contracts, whether they're businesses in Minnesota or they're state contracts, city contracts with Israeli businesses, are also, in one way or another, contributing to this genocide. Tell me, please, how are you working and with other members of representatives of the state of Minnesota, whether it's at the state level or at the Minnesota National Representation, to move us from being supportive of genocide to abandoning this horrific effort that is killing hundreds of thousands of people, injuring them, and it is costing our humanity. Thank you.
So for the state piece, many people don't know this, but Minnesota has an anti-BDS legislation that's on the books. I think I was the only one that voted against it. So it is a state law that it is illegal for my colleagues and any Minnesotan to ask for divestment of Israel and its companies. And so the first thing we gotta do is make it an issue and get the legislature to overturn that unconstitutional piece of legislation. Because there's nothing more unconstitutional than telling the citizens of this country that they do not have a right to boycott a foreign nation, to ask for divestment of a foreign nation, and to ask for sanctioning of a foreign nation. And Minnesota is one of dozens of states that unfortunately has that law. And so that's what I would say. That's why our colleagues are not having that conversation, because that's on the books. Secondly, in Congress, we've in many ways I think moved the needle and slowly are growing in support of ending weapons transfer to Israel. We just introduced the Block the Bombs legislation. I think there's about, you can clap for that. I think there's over 60 folks right now that are on the bill. And it's, it grows slowly. But the reason we're not, to be honest, the reason we are not going to see the public outrage match the legislators' outrage, whether it's our states across the country, they just had like 250 state legislators across the country go and visit with Netanyahu in Israel while he's carrying out a genocide, like a little war criminal. And you're not going to see the public's outrage match members of Congress' outrage. It's because there is this strong lobbying group that constantly threatens people. And many of my colleagues do not want to have a primary like I do. I've had a primary every single cycle, right? When I talk to them, they're like, I don't want to have to raise money. I don't want to try to fight, a group that has that much money and that much resources. And so it is now up to the public to make sure they make it an election issue, right? Like, it is important for constituents to say, if you are taking money from AIPAC, if you are beholden to them, then you cannot have my vote. There is no reason that the person who represents you should be beholden to any special interest group. I don't take any money. I don't take money from corporations. I don't meet with a lobbyist unless they have a constituent of mine to come talk to me about issues. Those things are possible. And I do those things because it was a pledge I made when I was running for office.
So who in the Minnesota delegation at the conference, at the national level? All members.
Oh, I think I'm the only one and baby Betty McConnell.
So are we going to vote with that in mind?
I suppose that's what I just suggested. there is
Hi. I was just wondering if you could do something as far as checking into or requesting autopsies for 5 full-term babies, infants, that their remains were found at the Washington Surgery Center in March of 2022. They were recovered by activists and by Lauren Handy, Progressive Anti-Abortion Uprising, but they are peaceful activists. But they did recover the remains of 115 babies in different stages, but the last 5 were late term. These are full-term infants. They were discovered at the Washington Surgery Center, which is a later term abortion clinic. Cesar Santangelo is the abortionist there. The babies are still being held at the Washington, D.C. Police Department. We'd like to see can there be an autopsy. The photographs look like the babies, or there were some illegal methods used, later term abortions, partial birth abortion. One of the little girls has the back of her head it all suggests a later term abortion. And so I was wondering if that could be taking place and if the remains of those babies could be given a proper burial. Thank you.
I think I've talked to you about this a lot, so I'm not going to give a public answer to it. We'll take this one.
We have Ukrainian refugee neighbors that came here from the war that now it's been over 2 years. They're here, I think, with TPS and maybe H-1B visas, but they had a 2-year term to work and their work authorization is expired. Is there a prospect that this will be renewed and they can stay in our country?
So we're seeing more re-paroles finally.
Those are immigration cases.
So we are finally starting to see more of the re-parole applications being processed for Ukrainian nationals. Earlier this year, when Trump rolled back all of the parole programs for Ukrainians, Cubans, Venezuelans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, they had just had a policy that that put every single application for anyone who had entered the country on parole on hold, even if somebody qualified for adjustment of status by marrying a U.S. citizen or they got sponsored by an employer, for instance. that for Ukrainians in particular was overruled by, that practice was overruled by a court, and USCIS was forced to begin processing those applications. It's been a slow process to get them resumed, but just in the last probably 2 to 3 weeks, we've seen a lot more Ukrainians finally get their status approved. It does vary case by case. If your neighbors live in our district, please have them reach out to us. We've had probably I think 6 to 8 different Ukrainian families reach out to us just in the last week to do inquiries, and we definitely like to do that for those folks.
Nikki works magic, so really, truly a gift.
Experience yesterday.
My name is Barbara Cole, and to answer your question, I live in Blaine. I come to my dear sister's town hall because my husband and I don't feel welcome at our town hall with Tom Emmer. We have a great candidate. Her name is Jean Hendricks, who's brave enough to run against him. So if you have relatives, friends, associates that live in Blaine, I ask that you call them up and ask them to help us to get him out, because we want him out. But Blaine is so inundated with the Republican agenda that they seem like they can't hear. Even though that they themselves are suffering. So if you have relatives, friends, you work in Blaine, you know people in Blaine, and Jean Hendricks is from St. Cloud, I think? Yeah, she's from St. Cloud. So we do our very best to try to encourage her and to support her. Even though you're not our representative, I've been knowing her for such a long time. And we're so proud of her. So we come to Minneapolis to hear the truth and to feel safe.
Thank you, Mrs. Cole.
Thank you again for hosting this. I just want to say you've done a great job, Representative Omar, in the face of all the bullying. And it really is just bullying over the past month. I mean, that censure vote, come on. Like, the clapbacks to Nancy Mace, good stuff, good stuff. Also, like, the tactic with Corey Mills, I love it. Democrats are finally playing the game, good stuff. My question is actually for Senator Clark, and it's actually about Representative Emmer. Our friend doesn't live that far from here. And if you look at what's going on nationally, Republicans are gerrymandering the hell out of their states. What's the appetite to gerrymander Minnesota? I live in South Minneapolis. I am happy to be part of that district if it gets them the fuck out of here. Excuse me.
Thank you. So we're tied 67-67 in the House, 34-33. Well, actually, right now we're down 2 members in the Senate. We're down, so we're 33 Democrats, 32 Republicans. We need to be building the majority for 2027 and 2028. So we've got a good candidate in Blaine as well on the Senate side. So go out and legitimately door knock out there. We are interested, and it's not something I think we normally should do. Thank you. I'm only 7 months into this, so I need coaching live. Thank you. So I have appetite for it.
Yeah. I once had commissioned one of your colleagues, and he was like, "Go out and vote for Ilhan." I'm like, "Oh my God, no." It is official. I know you guys ask a lot of political questions, but it is an official town hall, so we have to be careful.
she's standing now. This is a really strange request. I am not a registered Democrat. I just
We don't
vote
have
my
registration
heart.
here, so.
I just vote my heart. But I've been thinking that the Democratic Party, or maybe even the Libertarian Party, needs to come out and do some PSAs on the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, and all the amendments that have happened. And then back that up with the Federalist Papers. And if you haven't read those papers, fabulous. And it explains to the colonials how the Congress came about and the separation of state and powers. But I would think that both the Democrats and the Libertarians would benefit with
a refresher.
A refresher, but I was thinking more hitting it at the 17-year-olds who will be turning 18 in the next 3 elections, and doing it on social media, television, wherever. So that's my wish or desire to someone in your organization to go to those parties and give them that idea.
No, I thank you for your idea, and I would say, you know, it's a public town hall, so we welcome everyone regardless of what their political affiliations might be. I believe that's actually a really, really, really good idea. I have members of Congress that I serve with that tweet things like, the Constitution should never be amended. Right? And, you know, and then people, it goes viral. People like it. And all I can think about is, lady, you would not be in Congress without a goddamn amendment. You know, like it's simple things. Or just like you say, leave my Second Amendment right. Like, do you not hear the amendment part, which is amending it? And so, like, I do think, not just for the 17-year-olds. Some of my colleagues pass out the Constitution on the floor often. Because again, like I said, you know, the reverence for it only exists if you understand what it says. And because we don't really have a lot of people who do, there isn't a reference for it. So you'll see sometimes when the president is doing something and we are debating on the House floor, they will say, let him do it, I don't care. And it's like, we took an oath to care, to uphold the Constitution. That was the thing you signed. And so I think it is a brilliant idea, and yeah, maybe I'll do one. I did a video a couple of years ago on what it meant to be patriotic and what patriotism actually is, and it was good. So maybe I'll do a reading maybe of it.
Okay, this might be a ridiculous comment, but can't we hold Trump in contempt of the Constitution?
Yeah, but who has the power to do the holding accountable of anything, right? It's the only problem is that the power of Congress rests with the leader of the House and the Senate. And at this moment, those leaders are the ones who don't care. He's not doing enough. Like they will tell you, this is what I voted for. And it's like, you voted for our president, the commander-in-chief, to disregard the Constitution. It doesn't make any sense, right? It's weird times. Really, it is really weird times. And I get the argument for, our party's in power, we can do whatever we want. But we are better than that as Americans. Like, to me, that I am bothered by it because people look up to us as a country. And it's just, it's a shame that my colleagues don't think about what this makes us look like and what we are doing to ourselves. And there was one of Trump's former lawyers was on TV, and he said, what he has done to the country in the last 8 months will not be undone for generations. Because it's one thing, to disregard the rule of law, the Constitution, the reverence for institutions, for democracy. It's another when you now have a population that also is that way. Because Trump will leave office. Well, he ain't gonna live forever, at least we know. He's in his almost 80 or in his 80s, so even if he does force a dictatorship, hopefully, maybe that will not last too long. The Fox News is gonna have so much laugh at that. I'm not saying anybody should take him out, do not misconstrue what I'm saying. I'm just saying he's getting older. My point was, how do we contend with the public that has now come to know America under his leadership, that could benefit from reading the Constitution? That's the worry, and when nations struggle, that struggle is not overnight and it's not with the leader. It's the changing of the population and the way in which they think, the way they look at government, and the way that they look at their neighbor. So once you create those conditions, then all things are possible, and that's the thing that scares me the most. Because in many ways, I do believe we have strong institutions. I do believe. I don't hold the belief that, we're on the cusp of a civil war. I don't believe that as somebody who survived war. But I do believe we are at the beginning of something that is really, really bad for our nation. And not only do we have to fight the Trump administration, what they're doing, but we also have to find a way for the American public to go back in their minds and hearts in caring about this nation and its survival. Okay, I'll take one. Yeah, his numbers are extremely falling, but the cult that follows him is not changing their mind.
With the recent death of Assata Shakur, I've been thinking a lot about how there are some incredible figures in our history to look up to for hope and inspiration during dire feeling times. I was wondering if you have anyone that you look towards that, or I don't know, books that you like, or just things that, I don't know, offer some sort of thing to reach towards.
I mean, yes, obviously, I think thinking about, you know, folks who came before us, who endured so much in order for us to exist with the freedoms and liberties that we have today, that's a good start. But I would say personally, somebody I think often about, you know, when things are challenging in the halls of Congress is Shirley Chisholm. You know, they did everything they could. They gave her a committee that they believed she would not be able to succeed in, harassed her, did all kinds of stuff. And I remember watching her documentary Unbossed, and it literally changed the way in which I think about, you know, halls of power. And so that's somebody I go back to often. All right. With that, thank you all for joining us for this month's town hall. Hopefully, I'll be back next month with a better update and a government that is open at least. But grateful to my partners here for joining me, and grateful to you all for showing up every month, asking great questions and challenging me and giving me advice. Thank you all.